Has it started recording or?
Yes.
Oh, yes. There. Cool. All right, guys. I might as well start the session for today. Normally people keep dropping in after we well and truly started, so I think we'll just get started and get underway. Cool. So welcome to our September Power Platform and Dynamics 365 user group. We've got October, November, 2 more to go. So this is our third last one for the year. Very excited for this one today. We've got Nicholas MVP going into our Power Portals for today. Just before we get started, one of the things we do like to run through is the acknowledgement of country. So I'll just go through this quickly. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, as well as acknowledge the contribution they make to the life of this city and this region and our country. So because we're online still, it's just all about timing today. So it's nice and easy. Just want to let everyone know as well, we are recording the session. So Peter Schmidt from Microsoft will collate the video and send it out a bit later today. So if you know someone who couldn't make it today and would like to go through this video, there's a few people I know of. Feel free to forward this on once you receive it. As always, just want to chuck a piece in here around any ideas you may have around the Dynamics platform. So please, I know I keep banging on about this every month, but the Microsoft team are listening now big time. So if you've got any ideas, please post them up. So for today's another big session. So we're not doing the two smaller sessions. We've got one big one. But before we get underway, we've just got Bilal Said. He's going to go through and just show us the Power Text extension that's in Chrome for model-driven apps, and then that won't take long, and then we'll just get into the education session around Power Portals that will take the remainder of the session, and then we'll just go into a quick Q&A. I'm sure there's going to be a few people with questions. I've got a couple as well that I'm asking on behalf of other people, and then we'll wrap it up by 1 o'clock. So let's get straight into it. One tip, Bilal, do you want to take over and give us a bit of a quick tour of the Power Text extension?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's Bilal here. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So everyone can see the screen now.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thanks. So basically, it's the quick tip for the Power Text for the Google Chrome. So obviously, we can install onto all the Chromium browser as well. So I purposely choose the Edge here as well. So we just simply need to go into the Google Chrome store and just search the Power Text and then click on the extensions. And pretty much it was before very down, but it's pretty much the first option now coming, and it's been implemented by our next presenter, Nick and Gus. And you just need to simply add, and once it's been added, so it will appear here on your extensions on the browser. So if we click this one, so on Chrome it looks bigger, more presentable, but on Edge it's like a little bit smaller area. So what we're going to do, so we can create our shortcuts for data entry, for anything, which already some of the things coming by default. But if we pick up our model-driven app, so I just purposely showing this logical names as well. So let's see, there is a description, and we want to do some manual typing here to bring the names rather than typing every time the full name, and we want to bring this household name. So we're just gonna create the shortcuts. Happy underscore, like the actual field name. So copy this one household and come back to the extension, just right at the bottom, just add. And let's assume we say HHH because it's a household, so whatever you want to choose. So only trick here is percentage MDA. MDA is extension for model-driven app. And just in the bracket, you need to put that field name. I have already added another one for the name, which is the happy underscore name, NNNN. and you simply just save it. So once you save this one, come back here and probably just refresh the screen. Although it's normally sometimes straight away pick up, but it's better to refresh. So let's assume we come here. So we just want to put this dog or pet belongs to this household. So we just come in description. So we created the shortcut for name is NNN. So I will type NNM. So it brings the metadata for that. Belongs to household. So HHH, it brings the household name, and we want to put more description like happy birthday. So we just create HPD. It brings the whole message.
Well, so this should have been released. Yeah, I shouldn't need to do.
And just simply save this one. And so it's saved a lot of times for, especially when we're creating the cases or any in the other things. So we want to bring the name or any other field's name which we have to fill. So rather than typo or copy paste every time, you just create your shortcuts and just simply do that one, and you can keep enhancing this one. And there's other options. You can restore your thing, and you can import and export anywhere you want into your any other browser where you want, or changing your machines. So that was a quick tip. If any questions, Nick is the developer of this tool or extension, so I'm sure that we can have question at the end when Nick will have question and answer session. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Bilal. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's quite a handy little tool. I've actually not used that one before. Definitely would help out with the testing side of things if you have to keep manually typing in a lot of text just to test your forms.
Well, it's good for the end user as well.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, cool. So it's just it's easy to continue to type in the same text that already exists on another field. That's good. Alrighty. Okay. So I think, Nick, you might as well just jump across and take control of the screen, share your presentation. There's no need for me to quickly bring up the title. Yeah, and get straight into the Power App review for the releases. Thanks, mate. Take it away. You're on mute still.
That time I actually knew I was on mute. I just couldn't find the right screen to unmute myself. Too many screens I got going on here today. All right. Well, you guys can see my screen?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for showing up and for your interest in what's now known as Power Apps Portals. I'll do a quick little introduction here. My name is Nicholas Hayduk. I'm the president and a software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting, Inc. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I've been working with the Power Apps Portals product essentially since the beginning of the product. My career began with ADX Studio, which was a Canadian company that got acquired by Microsoft in 2015, so about 6 years ago, and they built a product called ADX Studio Portals, and that's essentially evolved into what's now known as Power Apps Portals. So when I first started at ADX Studio back in 2009, they were just kind of releasing that first version of the product. So that's what I've kind of spent my career doing, is learning how to use the Power Apps Portals product. If you do ever want to, if you have questions about portals, ever want to chat about portals, I've got my kind of LinkedIn, Twitter. I've got a blog, as well as a YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, we put out portals tips. Usually kind of every week, we put out kind of short 2-minute little tips on various aspects about Power Apps Portals. So feel free to follow me or link with me or whatever it is that the kids are doing these days. Always happy to chat portals. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Here's kind of the agenda that I put together. So we'll just kind of do a quick level set about what are Power Apps Portals. We'll then talk about, depending on the last time you've kind of used the product. I'll talk about kind of what was new in the April 19 release, which would have been kind of last like a spring 1 year ago, and then we'll talk about kind of what was in the fall release in 2019, what was released as part of the 2020 release wave 1, as well as what we can expect what's coming up here over the next 6 months, which is the 2020 release wave 2. We'll then talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is licensing, and hopefully there'll be some time for some Q&A if you have any kind of questions about portals. I'm happy to answer those. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing today. So first, let's just kind of dive into what are Power Apps portals. So this is what I took the screenshot earlier today. This is what you'll get if you install a Power Apps portal at the moment. So a Power Apps portal is one of the 3 main types of Power Apps, along with model-driven and Canvas. So when Power Apps first kind of got started, the term Power Apps was kind of synonymous with the Canvas-based Power Apps. Now the term Power Apps kind of covers 3 main areas, which are the model-driven apps, the Canvas apps, and Power Apps portals. What's key about Power Apps portals is that they let people who are not necessarily logged into Dynamics or into CDS or into the Azure Active Directory, they let people who are external to the organization log in and interact with your data that's in the Common Data Service. So the Power Apps portals are built on top of CDS, on top of the Common Data Service, and they're essentially a web portal solution that let you expose that data onto a website that there's kind of a different interface than the traditional model-driven apps. So what like I said, they're typically meant for non-Power Platform users. So people who are logging into Dynamics 365 or model-driven Power Apps, if they're logging into those interfaces, often that's not the same audience as the people who are logging into your portals. Typically, the people who are most often consuming portals are external audiences. So whether that's customers, partners of the organization, employees. What we find is kind of the most used portals is the help desk. So if you have the Dynamics 365 for customer service, you've got your cases. The portal kind of using the out-of-the-box templates can give you a help desk and get you up and running pretty quickly to allow users to log in, create cases, interact with their cases, so send message back and forth with the customer support team. And that's kind of one of the more common use cases for portals. But again, really any data that you have in your Common Data Service database, in your Dynamics database, can be exposed using Power Apps portals. So that's kind of really what Power Apps portals are. As I mentioned, what they did is they started off as a product, an ISV product from a company called ADX Studio, based here in the town where I live, which is Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And as I mentioned, they were acquired by Microsoft in 2015. The product was then rebranded a few times. It was known as the Portal Capabilities for Dynamics 365, also known as Dynamics 365 Portals, and are now known as Power Apps Portals. So, what's kind of changed over the last year and a bit? If we go all the way back to the April, so that would be what they now would have been the 2019 Wave 1 release. So that kind of covers the period from April to September of 2019. Microsoft, released a few different new features. One was the maintenance mode. So maintenance mode allows you, when the underlying database for your portal is not available. So if your CDS environment is, for whatever reason, unavailable, down for maintenance, you're doing some sort of copy, that sort of operation, you can put kind of a nice, pretty maintenance mode, site under construction, under maintenance kind of page. So that was one of the things that they introduced. Another thing that they introduced back as part of this release wave was the ability to have an OAuth token service for companion apps. So if you're not kind of familiar with the techniques, with the technique of a companion app. The idea with a companion app is that you can actually run your own code on servers that are hosted elsewhere. So you can host them, whether you want to host them on-premise or in Azure, you can certainly do that. But the idea is that if you need to run kind of your own server-side code, which isn't necessarily something that Power Apps Portals gives you, this OAuth token service to share the authentication. Microsoft also added support for Power BI Embedded. They did some enhancements to the portal checker. And kind of the big thing here was that they announced that there would be a CDS starter portal. So, and you'll kind of see as we go through this, at this point, the April 19 release, this was still known at the time as Dynamics 365 portals. And the key here is that in order to install a portal, you are required to have Dynamics 365 licenses. And there was a technical reason for that, and that was the solutions that get installed in your Dynamics 365 environment that the portal required had dependencies on certain Dynamics entities. The big one being the case entity. As I mentioned, one of the things that come out of most of the templates is the help desk functionality, which is tied to the case entity in Dynamics. So it essentially just wasn't technically possible to install the required solutions into the database if you just had what they call a naked CDS environment, or CDS without Dynamics in it. So what they introduced, or what they included as part of the April 19 release, was what they called the CDS starter portal. So that was Microsoft kind of went through this effort of taking all the solutions that were required for the portal, and they kind of extracted the parts that depended on the Dynamics app. So in this case, customer service. So they extracted those parts and made it possible to install portals on a naked CDS instance. So again, at the time they just announced Dynamics 365 portals. You can install Dynamics 365 portal on a CDS instance that didn't necessarily have Dynamics on it. To be honest, at this point, portals was still kind of a niche thing, maybe not as well known as it might be today. But what we should have maybe where that was leading, and so where that was leading was the 2019 release wave 2. So this is when these features would have been announced and started to be introduced in the October timeframe of 2019. As you can see here, what they announced here was the rebranding of Dynamics 365 portals. So instead of it being known as Dynamics 365 portals, it's now known as Power Apps portals. And this was the point where the portals product became at the same level as the model-driven app and the Canvas app. So this is the point where it became one of the three types of apps within Power Apps. Again, before this, portals was really just kind of a feature that you could add onto Dynamics. With this with this announcement in the 2019 release wave 2, they announced that it was kind of a full member of the Power Apps family, something that can be kind of licensed a little bit different, and it could be installed directly on CDS. They also include some enhancements to Power BI Embedded, and they included some more portal checker enhancements. Now I'll speak quickly to what portal checker is. You'll see that pretty much every release cycle that Microsoft has, so every kind of release wave, you'll typically see portal checker enhancements. And so if that's not a tool that you're familiar with, I strongly recommend that you check it out. It's available in the admin area, so the portals administration center. And essentially what it is a number of scripts, number of test cases that Microsoft has developed to give you kind of recommendations on how you might be able to improve whether it's the performance of your portal or the reliability, or if you're having errors. Essentially you can run this tool and it will tell you kind of the status of your portal, whether there's some site markers missing, or essentially a diagnostic tool. So, and the reason that we see this come up every single time in all the different release waves is that Microsoft just continually adds more checks, more rules to this portal checker. So definitely something, even if you've never run it on an existing portal that you've used, strongly recommend you go there, give it a try, see if everything kind of comes up, thumbs up. And if not, look at where they might have some recommendations and see if you can implement some of the recommendations they might have to improve the performance of your portal. The other kind of the other feature here, kind of other than the fact that Power Apps portals was introduced, is the Power BI embedded. Now, this is a question that when we're doing a lot of Power Apps portals implementations, kind of we get a lot. People, Power BI is part of the Power Platform, Power Apps portals is part of the Power Platform. Everyone just kind of assumes these things are all going to work together nicely. And to be honest with you, even though there was Power BI support before this particular release wave, it wasn't probably the Power BI experience that you would expect on a portal. Before they added support for Power BI embedded, there was really only two ways of adding a Power BI report to your portal. One was if you essentially took your Power BI report and published it to web, which means that anyone who knows the URL of your Power BI report could view it. So there's essentially no security on it. Obviously, that has some significant drawbacks. Often the data that's being reported on in Power BI, the data that's being visualized, is often it's sensitive data that you don't want to just kind of publish to web. Even if the URL is probably a little bit hard to guess, it can go around in emails, that sort of thing. So having a visualization that you essentially have to make public for it to show up on your portal is not ideal. The authenticated option for the Power BI integration before Power BI embedded was introduced was via Azure Active Directory. So essentially what that means is if you did want to kind of restrict it based on who was logged in, the users had to log into your portal using Azure Active Directory, which in the case of most portals, if you have external customers, external partners logging into your portal, they often won't have Azure Active Directory. And it also requires that they have a Power BI license. So again, if you're creating a portal for external audiences, most of the time you're not necessarily going to have those people be licensed users in Power BI. So, again, before this, your options were either make the report public so everyone can see it if they knew the URL, or they need to be licensed Power BI users in Azure Active Directory. Both fairly uncommon scenarios for implementation inside of Power Apps portals. With Power BI embedded, you can now then truly have the Power BI experience that you'd expect on a portal, where you can embed a Power BI report. Users don't necessarily have to be, they don't have to have a Power BI license. And what you can do is you can filter those reports based on the person who's logged in. What you have to do is you have to build in that filtering, that row level security into your Power BI reports. But there's essentially a way of passing over the identity that's logged into the portal into your reports, so that your reports can take into account that filtering. The downside of the Power BI embedded is the pricing. You go from what is kind of, depending on your currency, maybe $10 US a month for Power BI Pro licenses per user, to it's quite a bit kind of more higher cost level for Power BI embedded, but technically speaking, it's definitely a much nicer solve. So those were kind of the highlights of the release wave 2. Again, the big work that Microsoft did was the essentially the rebounding of Power Apps portals from Dynamics 365, making it possible to install in a CDS instance, and showing the world that yes, this is kind of a sibling of Canvas apps and model-driven apps. I'll also mention that if you do have any questions, feel free to I am kind of trying to keep an eye on the chat, I think, here. So if you do have any questions at any point during the presentation, please feel free to kind of do the chat. I'm not sure if people typically will come off mute and ask questions. If that's fine with other people, that's kind of fine with me. So happy to answer kind of any questions throughout the presentation. So that's kind of the highlights of the 2019 release wave 2. You can see the list was pretty short because the Power Apps portals element was kind of a lot of work for the Microsoft team. So that's kind of where they were focusing their efforts. Now I'm going to move on now to the 2020 release wave 1. And so those would have been the features that came out starting in April of 2020. But before I do that, I do want to just kind of make note of the preview area of the Power Apps Maker experience. So hopefully, if you're kind of more on the technical side, the more admin side, you're familiar with make.powerapps.com. We call that the Maker experience, where you can now edit your solutions, add entities, add fields, all that sort of stuff. What you may not be aware of is that if you go to make.preview.powerapps.com, you will get essentially the features that are currently in preview. So it'll look very much the same, but you'll see kind of new stuff light up. So as I continue on here in the process, if I have marked anything as preview, often in order to see it, you have to go to the make.preview.powerapps.com in order to see that functionality. So something that not everyone kind of knew about, so I thought I'd kind of highlight that before I jump into the specific features here. All right, so here's the list of things that we got out of the 2020 release wave 1. Once I kind of get through this list, I will jump over and we'll see a few of these kind of in practice. So there'll be not so much of me talking about slides and more kind of jumping into and actually seeing these in action. So as part of the 2020 release wave 1, and these are the ones that are actually available for you to play with today. You could go spin up a portal and you can see it. Other than the last one, to be honest, I'm not sure the authorization code in OpenID Connect. I haven't had to use it myself, so I'm honestly not sure if it's available. The documentation says it is available, so I suspect it is, but that's why I've got those question marks there. When I put kind of GA beside something, that of course means it's generally available, so it's essentially ready to go for production. And then there are some features that are currently in preview, so you can certainly try them out. But in terms of using them in a production environment, you may not get the level of support that you're looking for and the level of kind of stability that you're looking for a production environment. So just kind of buyer beware on any features that are still marked in preview. What was possibly my favorite feature is the ability to add additional entities to the global search. And if you can kind of if you're familiar with the Dynamics 365 portal's functionality in terms of search, really what the search gave you was the ability to search not only the content of the web pages on your site, but also the knowledge base. You could search through cases, you could search through the discussion forums. A lot of the features that were kind of core to the Dynamics 365 elements. So when they introduced the kind of the starter portal, which is the template that doesn't have any dependencies on Dynamics, the search became a lot less functional because there was no way to add your own custom entities to the search. If you created your own custom entities and added them via entity lists and entity forms, there was just simply no way to add those to the global site search. So with this 2020 release wave 1, they've introduced those capabilities. So you can essentially define, the entity that you want to appear in the search. You define which columns it will search. You define where to display the search results. And again, I'll just go into a quick demo of that in a few minutes here. But that was one that we've been kind of waiting for a while here. Often we have kind of custom entities that are being added to a portal, and to be able to include those in the global search is a huge bonus. So I really like that feature. The next feature here on the list would be the Power BI component in Portal Studio. So if you're not familiar with Portal Studio is the new interface that Microsoft is working on and is available for editing your Power Apps portals. It's essentially kind of the maker experience for Power Apps portals. So you'll see kind of a trend here that since Microsoft released that, and they kind of released it as part of the rebranding to Power Apps portals, what Microsoft is doing is they're adding capabilities that are technically possible, whether it's through code or going into the model-driven app. What they're doing is they're introducing those capabilities to the Portal Studio. And really the Portal Studio is meant to be kind of a simplified experience. It's meant to be kind of more of a citizen developer friendly. So no need to kind of know code and no need to kind of trying to simplify all the different components. So what they introduced here was the Power BI component in the Portal Studio, and it essentially gives you kind of a step-by-step instructions on setting up Power BI, because there are a few steps And before this existed, it required you to add a liquid tag to your pages in order to get Power BI installed. So what this does is it really just simplifies that experience, and you essentially kind of drag and drop a Power BI component. You're able to see a list of the Power BI, whether it's charts or dashboards or reports from Power BI to embed on your portal. Kind of all gets linked over. You get a drop-down list. So really kind of simplifies that process of creating or adding Power BI to your portal. And you can see that is generally available. So if you're interested in playing with Power BI on your portal, that's something that is available in Portal Studio today. The next one I have here on my list are the simplified themes. So Portals is built, I was kind of mentioning before we kind of got started here, Portals is built on the Bootstrap framework, which is a responsive CSS framework that was originally created by Twitter. It is based on version 3, which is getting a little dated, but it is what it is, and that's what we have to deal with. But creating a Bootstrap theme, while it's not overly difficult, it can be it's not an experience that's built right into Power Apps portals. There are other external tools to build your Bootstrap themes, but at the same time, what Microsoft want to do is they want to make it very easy to theme your portals. They want to make it very easy to apply essentially your custom colors, your brand colors to your portal. So what they did is they built a theming capabilities directly into the Portal Studio, and I'll show you guys how that works as well. They've also got simplified portal identity management. So again, this is something that you could do before. It wasn't that this is a new feature necessarily of the portals in general, but they've built into make.powerapps.com an experience to help you set up the authentication providers for your portal. So when you're creating Power Apps portals, you're able to select which authentication types you want to enable. So you can turn on, Facebook and Google and Microsoft accounts and LinkedIn and all those sorts of things. So you can configure all those things. Historically, that involved creating a bunch of settings with the right keys, and it was pretty easy to screw up that process. So Microsoft has kind of built a UI on top of those settings that makes it a lot easier to set that up and a lot less error prone. The portal checker enhancements, I kind of touched on those again. They've essentially added some more rules to that. And I did talk about the authorization code flow for OpenID Connect. That one's a little bit more technical. And again, I think it's in GA, but to be honest, I haven't had an opportunity to use it yet, so I don't have too much to say on that. But aside from the additional entities in global search, the other one that I was thrilled to see is the CRUD Web API, and you'll see that that's currently marked as preview. So the CRUD Web API, what that is I was mentioning earlier the idea of a companion app, and the idea with the companion app again was the ability in JavaScript code that you write onto your portal, because it's completely possible to write your own client-side JavaScript and add that to your portal. The challenge is that you couldn't use that JavaScript to interact directly with the CDS APIs. So if you've ever kind of used the CDS web API, where you can essentially create entities, delete entities, update entities, read entities, all that sort of stuff, those APIs are not available on Power Apps portals. So there was really no way in JavaScript to kind of directly interact with the CDS database. With the release of those preview features, and they became available, I want to say in kind of the not October, I think they became available in July. It is now possible to directly interact with the CDS database from JavaScript written on your portal without the need for a companion app, which is essentially a bunch of overhead and extra code that you have to write yourself. So with this new CRUD Web API, you can write your own JavaScript, put it on the portal, and it can talk directly to the CDS database. And so you can perform operations like deleting records, creating records, or updating records. Now, technically, it's not necessarily a CRUD API because the API right now does not support read operations, because there are other ways of doing that. So it's really just a CUD web API. So you can create, update, and delete. But I think read is something that's kind of on the roadmap. So we were super excited when they announced this. That's the thing we've probably been asking for the most, because what it does is it allows you to build out kind of rich user interface experiences on your portal. So if you are kind of comfortable writing front-end JavaScript and you want to kind of make a fancy drag-and-drop interface that that your users can experience, another popular example would be editable grids. Power Apps Portals out of the box doesn't support editable grids, but that is something that you can build yourself now using the CRUD Web API. And in fact, the sample that Microsoft has provided as part of their documentation is kind of a basic example of using the CRUD Web API to produce a editable grid on your portal. So we were thrilled to. You'll see that I'll mention it in the 2020 release wave 2, how that is planned to go into general availability, I believe, in February. So I got a question here. Are there any plans for custom events with Web API, i.e. actions on the CDS entity? I think, yes, I believe there are plans. There was nothing necessarily included in the release wave 2 notes, but I know in our conversations that we've had with Microsoft, it's definitely something that is on the roadmap. I don't know when that will be, but I do feel like that's something they want to tackle. And the feedback that we've given them is that's kind of the next logical step is, okay, once I can create, update, and delete, well, if I could run actions on those records too, that opens up a whole world of possibilities. So nothing specific in terms of when we can expect that, but I do expect that's on their roadmap. Thanks, Ben, for that question. What I'm going to do is, definitely something to vote on in the ideas area. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip over and go through some of these capabilities. Specifically, we're going to look at the additional entities in global search. We're going to look at we can take a quick look at the Power BI component in Portal Studios, the simplified themes, the simplified portal identity management. We'll take a quick look at those capabilities. So if I bring up my portal here, what I'm going to start off with is I'm just going to go to make.powerapps.com. Just bring that back over here. So I'm going to switch over to the environment that I set up for the call this evening. And you can see that I've got, this is just kind of a base Power Apps portal. I've got my portal itself, as well as I've got my portal management, which is the model-driven app that I can use to manage my portal as well. So one of the things that can get a little bit confusing about portals is all the different ways to, all the different ways that you can edit your portal. My current kind of YouTube tips, the last few ones, are all the different kind of interfaces that we use, whether it's the Portal Studio or the front-side editing or the portal management app or the tools for the XRM toolbox. There's a lot of options. In this case, what I want to look at is let's look at a few of the features that are available in the Portal Studio. So to get to the Portal Studio, what you do is you find your portal here, click the ellipse button, and then you click Edit. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring up this interface. So this is what I mean by the Portal Studio. So it's this interface here. So you can see it's very much, it's inspired by the new experience for editing your solutions and editing your forms for model-driven apps, as well as creating Canvas apps. So if we were to look at the Power BI component, if I just click on the components here, essentially what that is you click the Power BI button here, you can add that to your kind of drag and drop interface. And then essentially you can just kind of step through the process of adding the Power BI report. Now I haven't turned on Power BI in this environment, but you can see that immediately it already knows that I haven't even turned it on. So it basically will kind of step you through all the process of getting Power BI turned on in your environment, hooked up to the right Power BI workspace. And then once you do that, it will give you a list of the available reports or dashboards you might want to show. And then what it's doing is it's still relying on that liquid code that I mentioned earlier, but essentially it's inserting that liquid code on your behalf. Worry about crafting that liquid code. It will step you through the process of getting it all set up, selecting which views that you want to see, and crafting that liquid code and dropping it on the page for you. So that's what they mean by the new Power BI component. Again, not necessarily a new feature from the the end portal perspective, because everything that you could still do that. It's just making it a lot more accessible to citizen developers to create these types of interfaces. I'd like to show you the simplified theming experience. So whereas before, if you clicked on themes, you basically just got the ability to edit your CSS files, which, if you're familiar with Bootstrap and you want to kind of go a little bit more in depth, you can certainly edit those CSS files. But if maybe the editing CSS files is not really your style, what you can do is you can click this Enable Basic Theme button. Once I do that, and of course I clicked the wrong thing here. So you can see here, I've got a number of themes that kind of come out of the box. They've actually added some new ones recently. I don't remember the dark blue and the dark yellow being there. So I can essentially click dark yellow, and what it's going to do is it's going to apply that theme to the portal. And you can see here, they essentially give me 7 settings. So essentially our theme is just a number of colors that you get to pick. So you get to pick kind of the primary color for buttons, what the header is going to be, the header menu text color, the header menu hover color. So again, when I go up here and I'm hovering over things, I'm able to define all these colors. What I can also do is say, I like that, but I kind of want my own custom theme. So what I can do to do that is I just click New Theme. What that's going to do is it's going to bring up a theme over here, and then I can start going into here and picking my own color. So I want that nice teal color. Let's say that. You can see as I change that, it's going to create my theme, update it, and I'm changing the various aspects of my portal. Again, I can go back to my themes. I go into my custom theme. I can save copies of it. I can change the name, and I can configure the various Nick's theme. And then I can say, I want my header actually, I like red. No one's ever accused me of having an eye for design, so yeah, I'm going to make this pretty ugly. But yeah, there's, like I said, it's a very kind of simplified experience in terms of there's only kind of 7 different settings here, so there's a lot more you can do with Bootstrap if you wanted to. But for kind of the citizen developers, it's a quick way to just kind of apply your company's colors and that sort of thing to it. So that's the simplified theming. I'm just going to get rid of that, go back to my basic theme, and go back to the original theme that came with the product. So it's kind of easy to turn it on and off, easy to play around with it. It's nice that as you kind of click on things, the colors change and you can kind of see it live in action. So that's what they mean by the simplified theming experience and the Power BI component in this, what's known as the Portal Studio. I'm going to go back to make.powerapps.com and show the... I'll leave here, and I'm going to show you the kind of the simplified portal identity management. So the way that you would get to that is you go to your apps. Oh, it keeps kicking me back to the default environment here. Go to my environment here. And so what you would typically do is you go to portal, your portal, and you click here, and you'd say settings. And what there should be is an option here to say view the portal identity management. Now, the reason it's not showing up is that that feature is still in preview. So in order to see that, what I actually have to do is I have to go to make.preview.powerapps.com. Once I do that, I'm going to magically have a few extra options. I go into settings. Now you can see I have authentication settings. So I'm going to click on authentication settings, and that's going to bring me to a new area where I can essentially pick the identity providers that I want to turn on for my portal, including Azure Active Directory B2C. Azure Active Directory B2C is Microsoft's kind of preferred way of authenticating users on your portal. Just in case you are aware, in case you're not aware, using local authentication directly from the portal It was deprecated at one point. Microsoft removed the deprecation notice simply because Azure Active Directory B2C is not available in every Azure data center. Once that's available, they will be deprecating local sign-in again. So I strongly recommend that you look at either a custom identity provider using OpenID Connect or using something like Azure AD B2C as kind of the preferred method there. So, and this just makes it way easier to set up. Otherwise, you're kind of dealing with, you can see here, you kind of select your login provider, protocol, give it a name, and it'll kind of step you through that process. Now, there's still things you have to do on the other sides of these identity providers. So you still have to configure it in the Azure AD B2C side or in Facebook or LinkedIn. So you still have to do configuration on the other side. But if you've ever done this manually, what you typically have to do is you have to start changing site settings that have specific names and specific formats. And it's pretty easy to do that incorrectly. So what this other experience is doing is essentially setting up those site settings on your behalf with the correct names. So a much kind of simplified interface. But again, not every possible setting is available here. So as you can see here, you can always jump over to the model-driven app, which is this experience, and edit the settings that way. Just taking a quick look at the questions. Any plans for the possibility to have each web form step use their own web template? So I haven't heard about any enhancements on the web form side. There's another MVP that if you're interested in portals and you're not following, you definitely need to Colin Vermander. He actually works at Adoxio, which is the company that got spun out of ADX Studio. He kind of did a push over the last little while to try and get some enhancements done to the web forms. So we'll see if that kind of push results in any updates. But really, we haven't seen anything in the release notes, and that's where those kind of features would be included. So I'm not aware of any kind of new features being added to the web form. So unfortunately not. I'm not aware of that. I see another question here. How to export theme and export to a different environment. So there's not really an out-of-the-box way of doing that. Like, that's not something that they just have an export button, but I can show you kind of how this process works under the hood. So if I go back to my portal and I say edit, that's going to take me over to my theme here. And if I go back to my themes and I say enable basic theme, it's going to go back to my custom theme here. The thing to keep in mind is that this experience and this interface is still just editing data back in your CDS environment. So if I go back to my CDS environment, what it's doing is it's creating a web file with the CSS that I've customized. So if I go into my web files, I will see that it will have created a theme, which is this portal basic theme, which I can then view the notes on, which is where the actual CSS is created. If I just were to look at that and open that up, you can see that here's the code that's created with the colors that I've chosen. So if you wanted to kind of export that and move it over to another theme, or to another instance, all you'd have to do is kind of move over the CSS, maybe create the theme, create a kind of a base theme in the other instance, get it to create the web file, and then you just can replace the underlying note that's attached that actually contains the CSS. So while I don't know if there being kind of an export button in the Portal Studio, because it's just creating data in your CDS environment, there is a way to kind of get at it that way. So hopefully that answers that question. Got a couple more minutes here. I just want to show you the search capabilities. So what I've done is I've created, I happen to be a big golfer. That's what I like to do in my spare time. What I did is I created a custom golf course entity, and what I want to do is I want to make it searchable. So I'll quickly kind of go through the steps that were required in order to do that. So the first thing you have to do is you have to create a couple site settings or modify a couple site settings. So I'm going to go into the site settings. Pretty straightforward related to search. So the first one is there's search / enable additional entities. So you simply have to create that site setting and set it to be a value of true. And then the next thing you have to do here is you have to go into the search filters and you have to add the entity to it. So this controls this particular interface. So when I drop down the search and I have all, and it says golf courses there, this is driven by that particular filter setting. So by creating this and say, I want this to say golf courses, and then I'm telling it the entity that I want to search. So in my case, it's the nh_golf course entity. So what I had to do is essentially just create or update these two settings. I also want to point out that we've got the documentation from Microsoft, basically step-by-step, great documentation on how to do this. So you don't have to take notes because the Microsoft kind of has it all documented. But like I said, so there's basically these couple settings that you got to set up. The next thing that you have to do is you have to create a site marker. So the site marker tells the search results where to go. When you search for something, it shows up in the search results and you want to see the details of that. You create what you have to do is you have to create a page on your portal that will show the results for that particular thing. So often that can be done using an entity form. So what you do is you create an entity form that accepts the ID of the record as a parameter, and you kind of wire that up via the site setting. So you can see that the name of the site setting is the name of the entity _ search results page. And then you just point that at the actual page that displays the details for a particular course. So first set up the site settings, then set up the site marker. The other thing you have to do is when you're editing your, let's go back here. When you're creating your entity, you have to tell the portal, I'll go here. You have to tell the portal which columns you want to get indexed, because it's not just going to index all of them. You have to kind of tell it specifically. So the way that you do that is on your entity, what you do is you create a view named portal search. So if I go to my views, you'll see that I have a view called portal search. And so whatever columns I've included in my portal search view will be included in the index for my searching. So you have to make sure that you're doing that. The other thing you have to do is entity permissions. So you do have to create entity permissions for this. So what I've done is I've created a global golf courses entity permission, which basically gives everyone the ability to read it. I've given that to anonymous users so that anyone who's on my portal can see it. So finally, once I've done all of that, what I do is I just clear the search I rebuild the search index. With all my settings in place, it will know to index the golf course search. And then what that does is it adds it to here. I could do a search here for a course that I know is in there. When I click the search button, what that does is it will go to the search index, which will include my golf courses. You can see that in here I have a single golf course that matches that search criteria. And when I click this link, you'll see that it's going to point to the page that I had with the site marker with the ID of that record of the query string. I can click that and it will take me to the details page for the custom entity search. Of course, you could build out a page here using Liquid as well. So if you want kind of a different layout here, you can use an entity list, an entity form or Liquid. All right, I'm going to just quickly jump back here. Just a couple more minutes. The release wave 1, what's coming is there's still something, the simplified web page access management, so the ability to restrict who can view what pages. That was part of the 2020 release wave 1. I still don't think it's been released into preview or general availability, so that is coming. What can we expect out of the 2020 release wave 2? So that's basically started in October. So there are some Portal Studio enhancements. So one is the ability to add virtual agents as a component. So similar to the Power BI, where we're able to kind of drag and drop and kind of insert it in there. Again, you can add Power Virtual Agents today if you want to add the code yourself, but that will kind of make it a little bit more accessible to your kind of citizen developers. And you're also going to be able to configure entity permissions right in the Power Portal Studio as well. So that's another feature that they're working on. But the big exciting news is that they are planning on having support for PCF control, so Power Apps Component Framework. So if you're using Dynamics or model-driven apps or Canvas apps, you know that you can build out these new components using JavaScript. So what the Portals folks are working on is having them supported in having PCF support in portals, which is fantastic news. And they're also the web be generally available. I think it's in February, so during this release cycle as well. So it's in preview right now. Will be generally available as well. I did want to quickly talk about licensing. It is kind of the bane of my existence because Microsoft, when they announced Power Apps portals, they did change how the licensing worked. Under the old model, you essentially paid per instance. Every portal you had, you paid for each instance, and the other thing was that you got one instance for free if you had at least 10 Dynamics license. All of that's changed, so there's no kind of free portal anymore. What you do is you pay depending on the 3 types of users that can access your portal. So one is internal users. Internal users are people who are, in Azure Active Directory, internal users of the organization, and they're just licensed like Portal is any other sort of app. So whatever license you'd need for a Canvas or model-driven app is the same license you'd need for the Portal. So whether that's the per app license or the unlimited Power Apps license or the Dynamics license, all that would cover you for your Portal. For people who are external to your organization, there's kind of two types. One is anonymous. So essentially what you pay is for page views for anonymous users. And the cost in US dollars, the way it is right now, is you pay $100 every month for up to 100,000 page views. And for people who are logged into the portal, you essentially pay every time they log in, except for the fact that every time they log in over a 24-hour period counts as a single login. And so the way the pricing works on that is 100 logins costs you $200, 1,000 logins costs you $1,000, or $5,000 US. Right now, there's really no dashboards or reports for the usage of your portals if you're looking at migrating from the old way to the new way. Just know that right now licensing is not forced, so your portal won't get turned off if you say guess at, I think we're going to have 200 logins this month, and that's what you pay for, and you have 250. Microsoft doesn't turn off your portal. So essentially use your best judgment if you're wanting to estimate licensing. There's really no incentive to overestimate because that could lead to, because they're essentially not going to turn it off. Although if you kind of severely underestimate, you could lead yourself, you could lead to pain in the future once they do enforce it. And just be aware that if you're thinking that you have large volumes of portals users that don't necessarily fit into those pricing models, be sure to talk to your kind of Microsoft reps because there might be some more attractive pricing. Yeah, Peter mentioned they give. Yeah, I probably can't comment on exactly what the discounts are, but let's just say they are definitely worth having the conversation about. Question here: Can you enter multiple entities? Can we include within the same search filter? Yeah. So for the additional entities, you can have multiple searches. If you spin up one of the kind of the Dynamics templates, so the customer self-service partner portal, they have a number of different entities. You got web pages and knowledge base and cases in there, so you can enable as many custom entities in the custom search as you'd like. And that is what I wanted to cover. I don't think there's any other questions in the chat, and I know that it's already 1:02, I think it is for you guys. So happy to stick around if people have questions, but I also want to respect all your time. So that's what I want to get through today.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. That was awesome. I do have one question on behalf of Ian Dalglish. He just wanted to know if there was a way to programmatically to refresh the cache, because he's noticed there's like a 15-minute delay when you adjust the web roles or adjust the organization on a contact. And I think he's got a scenario where he's programmatically changing those values, but then he's getting this delayed caching refresh experience. So he's just wondering if there's any way to programmatically refresh that. I noticed you had that screen up before, but just wondering if you had any idea on that one.
Unfortunately, no. That is something that we recently had a kind of a feedback session with the portals team, and that was one of the things that we're asking for is a way to programmatically refresh the cache. At this point, there's no documented supported way of doing that. I'll kind of leave it at that. Yeah, unfortunately, but it is something that we're asking for, and I think we've got buy-in from the product team. It just depends on where it ends up in their priority list, but I think we've convinced them that at least there's some kind of reasonable use cases for doing something like that. So I'm hopeful it's on their roadmap.
Yeah, cool. All right, I think there's just another question just popped up there from Sean.
Yeah, will the same PCF controls work on the? So the question is, will the same PCF controls work in Dynamics versus on the portal? If you podcast and you like hearing about portals, we do. I along with a couple other MVPs, Nick Dolman and Colin Vermander, we have a refresh the cache focus on portals, and we actually talked about this in our episode that we put out last week. We think that the answer is probably not. You'll probably end up having to have PCF control that work specifically for Canvas apps versus model-driven apps versus portals. Some of the simpler ones, like if it's a simple dial, then maybe they will work, but we suspect there'll still be some kind of targeting of the platform. So, if you have a fancy PCF control that you've developed that works, in a model-driven app, my guess is that it's not just going to be put on the portal and everything will just work. I think there'll be some stuff that will be supported, other stuff that you might have to target specifically to portal. So yeah, I think it's I think that there will be some that might work and others that probably won't. So.
Cool. Any other questions, anyone? Phil, this is your chance to ask Nick.
I've got a quick one, Ben. Actually, I wonder whether the ability to embed Canvas apps into portals will come at some point in the future. Have you got any thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah. So I know that there's so the challenge with that is that right now with model-driven apps and Canvas apps, the security model is all based around Azure Active Directory. So technically, I think Nick Dolman might even have a blog post on it. Like technically, you can embed a Canvas app on a portal. It just where it all falls apart is the security. So if you're logging into your portal with Azure Active Directory, you can just embed a Canvas app on it if you want. The big ask that's been going on for years and years and years is people want to take Canvas apps and give them and expose them to their customers. And so that was I think that was the number one idea on the ideas was make Canvas apps available to external people. And so when Microsoft announced Power Apps Portals, they said, here you go. We did the thing you asked us. We've given you a Power App that's for external people. And people kind of were like, well, yeah, but that's not really what we were asking for. But Microsoft did kind of say, mission accomplished. We did what you asked. So I'm not overly optimistic that that's coming anytime soon. I agree it would be a great feature, but I think that there are quite a few kind of technical hurdles that have to be kind of resolved first. So I think the overall direction for Microsoft is to try and kind of merge all these things together so that Canvas apps will be model-driven apps and there kind of won't be a difference. But I think, especially from the portal's perspective, I don't see it around the corner.
Okay, thanks.
I wonder if there would be any appetite to be able to convert a Canvas app to a PCF control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah, that's the same concept, I guess, as the Power BI embedded, right? So embedded is more for getting around that licensing aspect, I would have thought. So maybe the concept of the Canvas embedded could happen, but it'd be interesting to see how it merges together.
If they went down the consumption-based pricing like you have with Power BI, for apps, then that would make a big difference.
Yeah. And I think that's probably that's the main issue, right? It's just the licensing side. So yeah, consumption is pretty much how we solve that problem. So
yeah, from a technical perspective, I think it's the security is all based on Azure AD, and those people just don't have Azure AD accounts. So yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Nick, for presenting that today. That was awesome. If anyone needs to reach out to Nick, he did post his LinkedIn link URLs earlier in the video. So
yeah, I can go back to that.
Bring that up. There we go.
So there I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, blog. I should probably put the podcast Refresh the Cache on there as well. But if you follow me on those other things, we always kind of retweet or share that as well. So
cool. All right. So thank you very much. I think I'll just quickly flick to my PowerPoint that I had.
I'll stop sharing my screen here. I see just one more quick question here. Will Microsoft be providing any official tool or mechanism to deploy Portal across different environments? So their official tool for that is the configuration migration utility. They do provide the kind of the pre-built schemas for doing that for all the different Portal templates. With the added feature to the configuration migration tool that you can now apply fetch XML queries or fetch XML filtering to the entities that it extracts, we find it to be a very, very useful way of doing the kind of the ALM process for Portal. So if you haven't played with the configuration migration tool, especially since the introduction of the fetch XML filters, strongly recommend you check that out.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we've started using that already on with some of our clients. It's been quite handy.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, that's I think Microsoft's answer, and I don't think that answer is going to change anytime soon. So, it's worth getting familiar with.
No worries. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Nick, thank you again. I know it's late where you are. Probably 11 p.m. now. So, thank you very much for your time. The community here in Perth definitely appreciate it. I think there's a few people abroad as well who have dialed in today, so it's good to see. So for our next session for October is the 29th. We'll do a Teams live event again. We don't currently have any topics lined up at this stage, I don't think. So if anyone has any ideas or what would like to present, definitely put your hand up, and we'll definitely get the next agenda out pretty soon. And that's it for today. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Nick and Bilal, for showing us that little power text thing. That was good.
Just two things very quickly, Ben. I put in the chat, there was a whole load of Dynamics and Power Platform announcements at this week's Ignite conference, and I've posted a whole load of articles on LinkedIn, so I've put the link to that. And don't forget, we've got the Biz Apps launch for the October 2020
yes.
wave too. So don't forget that happening next week, so I'll put the link there as well.
Cool, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you guys in a year from now, and we'll talk about all the new stuff that's coming out over the next year.
Cool. Can we book you in?